BSN's Motoring 96 is brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality, always has, always will, and Midas, the way it should be.
Now, if you don't have any friends who own a pickup truck, you may find this hard to believe, but the best-selling vehicle in North America, without a doubt, is the pickup truck, with General Motors and Ford in a constant battle for the #1 spot. Now, they don't come cheap. I mean, they come with the latest automotive technology, leather interiors, CD players, 25 cup holders, and so on. So what's my point? Well, I'm glad you asked. You know, despite all these improvements and despite the selection, as we're about to see for some truck lovers, it's still not enough.
All right, I'd like to welcome everybody here today to the 4th Annual Open House and Truck Show here in Ajax, Ontario. The summer season is here. We got our wheels cleaned up. Our trucks are lowered down. The tunes are pumping and we're ready for summer.
Customization is much easier. This is today's hot rod that the kids can't afford that aren't left. All the old car bodies are gone, so trucks are definitely more doable than, say, a Mustang or a Camaro. So it's a good choice if you want to make your own statement.
What kind of statements are they trying to make here?
Take a look at me. That's the #1 statement most of these kids want to say.
He's in a good mood for a race.
Well, most of our customers usually drive an older truck, you know, a couple years old, so it gives them time and budget-wise and cost to customize it. The guys that have the budget for the newer ones still definitely want to customize, you know, through lowering rims and paint. Handling is a definite improvement when it comes to lowering a vehicle, but I think most people just want the looks. They want to take the air out between the wheel wells. They want to get lower to the ground. It's got a sporty look to it, and I think that's what they go for.
Well, I'm a machinist for a living, and being a machinist, I can never leave things enough alone. I've always got to play with it. Everything seems to have been done to cars in the past, but now with the better design of truck and the way things are going, I just couldn't leave it alone. It cried out, it had to be altered. A lot of our designs come from California, and they're thinking that they have it out in California, and I thought it had to be the first one done like it. It's a 1990 454 SS, which was originally supposed to be a limited production, but sold so well that GM said, well, we've got to keep it going, so they kept it going to 93. Some of the unique features on it is the running neon that is on this vehicle, which is actually built right into the vehicle. You've just got to use your imagination and get the brain cells working just to get that extra little bit that someone hasn't thought of before.
Tell me what you got here, and is it kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing, or what? Tell me about it.
Well, yeah, it is a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's got a V8 under the hood. It's a 305 with 400 turbo tranny, shift kit, bit of engine work done to it, rear end work done to it, but to look at it, she looks stock. And custom show, I mean, we've still got the customs, got the shaved door handles, the roll pan, French license plate, you know, it's been lowered. So everybody else likes to lift their hoods and show what they got, but keep it quiet and simple, and makes the competitors and the viewers wonder what you've got under the hood. It's a little different, but it tends to draw the crowds when you leave 2 patches of rubber when you're leaving and wondering, hey, that doesn't look too stock anymore.
Well, originally I bought this truck from Active Tire. I always liked pickups, and I just didn't like to have the same truck like everyone, so I just came with the idea of cut the roof, put the roof in the back, and all of that stuff. It's not completely finished as yet, but eventually I'm gonna have hydraulics on the tonneau cover in the back, and then when it's raining, I can take out the roof and put it on, and hydraulics will bring it back down, and everything will be nice and okay.
What makes you work all day and then spend a lot of time working on this? What drives you? What's it all about?
For the love of it, having something that nobody else has.
Well, this is a very old trend. You can thank our Mexican friends and the guys down in South LA. It's something that's been going on since the 50s and has been quiet, but with today's new products and new skills available in shops around the world, it's come back, and it's very, very affordable. Usually in the $2,500 to $5,000 range, will definitely get you a vehicle that'll dance up and down, side to side, back to front, or three-wheel motion.
And it's just for looks?
It's just for looks. It's just for fun. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's me, and that's the end of the story.
I've been dying to ask this question. Why do you do this?
It's theft-proof, it's different, and nobody can tow my truck when I'm downtown.
You can put it flat down?
Oh yeah.
And it's different.
Oh yeah, it's definitely different. Definitely a crowd pleaser, and everybody loves it.
You never do it while driving, though?
Never. Can't do it. There's a switch that locks it out.
And you never do it after a heavy meal?
I wouldn't try it.
No hydraulics on this truck. Aren't you a little out of the norm here?
A little bit. Now that I look around and see all the trick stuff here. It's a 51 Ford panel delivery. I've owned it almost 10 years now. It took about 5 winters of work to get it to where it is now. And I've always liked vans for work trucks. And I was looking for a truck to do over, and I found this van.
The satisfaction, does it come, I mean, what kind of satisfaction do you get out of something like this?
Oh, definitely personal. There's no financial benefits. It's appraised at about half of what I put into it. About $46,000 so far.
$46,000 you put into this truck?
So far.
Are you a married man?
Yes.
Which is the better half thing?
She would like to have spent the money on a new Corvette.
It's a tough job, you know, but somebody's got to do it. This week on Test Drive, we take a look at the Trans Am Ram Air. Woo, boy. A car set to go head to head with the Mustang Cobra.
The Trans Am has always been a pretty hot and heavy automobile where the focus has been fairly direct. Power, power and more power. Well, for 96, the WS6 Ram Air Edition is the hottest to date.
The first indication that this Firebird is a little different is found right up front here, because these two hood scoops are actually functional. Air is drawn in through them straight into the air cleaner box. In effect, as the name would imply, the air is rammed into the air cleaner and then into the engine. The result? Free breathing, lots of horsepower.
The effect this forced air induction method has is immediately obvious. Horsepower jumps from 285 to 305, while torque jumps 10 to 335 pounds-feet at 3200 RPM. The result is instantaneous throttle response. Breathe on the gas pedal and the power comes on big time. In the race to the 100k mark, the Ram Air requires just 5.5 seconds. Beyond the legal speed limit, however, is where you find the true speed. One poor chap needed a change of underwear after a run around the block, but that's another story. Matched with this engine is a 6-speed manual box. The ratios are well spaced, and the 0.5 to 1 top gear ratio gives relaxed highway cruising, and it also helps on the fuel economy front. The drawback is the clutch. Its action is heavy, and so in heavy traffic it becomes a bit of a chore. That aside, I guess it is rather progressive.
My pet peeve has to do with something GM calls switch shift. Now, because motoring's a family show, I can't tell you what I would call it. However, when you pull away in first gear, if you move away slowly, as you should do, it automatically pushes you into fourth, which causes the engine to lug badly. And if you need to move any faster than a snail, you've got to go and find second all over again. It's really aggravating. Now, the sad part is it's not GM's fault. It was legislated in the US because of fuel economy reasons. I've got a message for the government. Not only should they stay out of the bedroom, stay the heck out of gearboxes too.
The suspension features a double wishbone design up front and a solid axle multi-link design in back. The whole lot has been reworked to handle the extra horsepower. First, the spring rates have been increased, the shocks have been revalved for faster response, and the sway bars are much thicker. Pontiac's engineers also stiffened the transmission mount and panhard rod bushings. The latter is what locates the rear axle, keeping it in place when the power comes on stream. On the skid pad, the revisions had the desired effect. Body roll is next to non-existent and the feel is perfectly predictable. On the highway though, the settings are on the stiff side, meaning you become quite intimate with practically every bump. Personally, I would soften the lot up just a smidgen.
One of the contributors to the overall harshness of the ride are these tyres. They're a massive set of 275/40 ZR17s. Now while the 275 is perfect on the skid pad, the very low profile does little for ride comfort.
Stopping power is supplied by a four-wheel disc brake system that features the usual anti-lock. Now these things are powerful, stopping the Ram Air from 80k in just over 118 feet. The pedal feel though is not all it could be because it requires a lot of pressure to get the desired stops. That said, and in fairness to GM, these brakes had been trashed and so it's probably a flaw unique to our tester. Inside, the Firebird is tastefully attired with all the major controls being readily reached and easily operated. Normally I'm not a fan of steering wheel mounted radio controls, but given the gusto at your right foot, they actually come in handy on this car.
It's a beautiful day, you want to take the T-tops off. On this car, it's that simple. The really nice part though, GM have thought to add a proper storage space. You simply drop them in like that, you can now drive around without fear of damaging your T-tops.
On the safety front, the Trans Am comes with the right stuff, from dual airbags to anti-lock brakes. Now traction control is an available option, and one, given the power, I would highly recommend.
With the exception of these pop-up monstrosities, this Trans Am is quite a car. And you know what? For the second time in as many weeks, I have had a real blast doing test drive. Before I go, one little piece of advice. If you goose this car, you override the switch shift. Well, that's my excuse and I'm sticking to it. Thanks GM, and I apologize for the rubber.
Last week, as you may know, we had to cancel the brake tests on the Mustang Cobra. The reason? A clunk. Well, we had it checked out and it was rather simple as I suspected. The suspension spring was moving in its saddle. Now that was down to somebody that had the car before us and abused it, not Ford's fault.
You know, there are two things every motorist dreads. First, getting a flat tire on the highway, and second, having to jack the car up. Well, check this out. Who says customizing isn't practical? All right, we're now going to head to the garage and join Bill Gardner. And you know something? I get this feeling that when it comes to customizing vehicles, Bill is not a big fan. Right, Bill?
Yeah, you got it right, Brad. I can still hear my dad when I used to rip my motorcycle apart and soup it up every winter. Leave it alone. He was right. Anyhow, this week I want to talk a little bit about spark plugs and the need for tuning up engines. Now, in the past 15 or 20 years, the need for regular tune-ups has greatly diminished. In the early to mid-70s, all the manufacturers got into electronic ignition, and that greatly reduced the need for changing spark plugs and doing routine tune-ups. And in the 80s, of course, electronic engine controls and computerized fuel injection again reduced the need for tune-ups. But changing or replacing the spark plugs is still something that needs to be done periodically. Not as often. You're finding cars today that are recommending spark plug change intervals of as high as 160,000 kilometers. That's on the vehicles that come equipped with platinum tip spark plugs. We've got a set of those here we want to show you today, and a couple of other recent developments in spark plug technology. And this has only happened over the past few years, so it may be something that you're not up to speed on yet. Okay, let's have a look at a few of these spark plugs. Now here's a brand new, very plain stock spark plug. You can see the steel shell and the threads here where it threads into the cylinder head of the engine. This tapered area here is where the spark plug seals against the cylinder head of the engine. Up here is the porcelain insulator and the anti-flashover ribs that prevent the spark from jumping from the spark plug boot across to the shell and grounding out. Up here is the tip where the spark plug boot clips on. And down here at the front of the spark plug, the firing nose, you can see the ground electrode, the center electrode right in there, and the porcelain insulator that prevents the spark from occurring between the center electrode and the shell in here. You want, of course, the spark to jump across this gap in order to properly ignite the mixture in the combustion chamber. Now here we can see one of these replacement spark plugs. This is a split fire design. This is an aftermarket brand that advertises improved performance and fuel economy and better horsepower. And you can see what they've done. They've changed their ground electrode and forked it somewhat. They've done it in a fork shape like this, and hence the name split fire. Now here we've got a platinum tip spark plug. This is a design that came out a few years ago and is used as standard equipment in quite a few vehicles today. In particular, the Ford Aerostar van, which has a very difficult to replace spark plug application. They come from the factory with a platinum tip spark plug, so you won't have to go in there and replace them as often. On platinum tip spark plugs, you'll notice that the center electrode is almost invisible. This particular one is flush with the insulator tip here, and you virtually can't see it. It's a very fine wire made of platinum, and these spark plugs are around $7 or $8 a pop. Now here we've got one of the latest developments, and this is the AC Delco Rapid Fire. This came out in the States about 7 or 8 months ago, and in Canada just in the last couple of months. They've gone with a nickel-plated shell, which is going to prevent corrosion on the spark plug and make this spark plug far less likely to seize up in the cylinder head of the engine. And that can be a problem from time to time, especially with aluminum head engines. I tried out the platinum tip spark plug and the split fire in my 91 Honda Civic. Now, that vehicle was running well when I put them in, and I didn't detect any improvement in the fuel economy or throttle response of the vehicle. The drivability was good when I started, but the real long suit, of course, of a platinum tip spark plug is how long it's going to last. I had them in for a year. Now, if I'd kept them in for 5 or 6, obviously I probably would have had more linear performance. With the split fires, I did get a small improvement in fuel economy, between 1 and 2 miles per gallon on average. And I'm about to try out the AC Delco Rapid Fires in my pickup truck. They're advertising a 2% improvement in fuel economy, smoother idle, better throttle response, and much less likely to corrode in the engine. I'm just about to put a set in, and I'll report back to you later on what I found out. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 96.
With so many car magazines on the market, consumers can sometimes feel overwhelmed with the choices. It's an easier decision, though, for Canadian readers. World of Wheels and Carguide are the only car magazines on the Canadian market, and this year, Carguide is celebrating its 25th anniversary.
25 years, certainly quite a milestone. Publishing industry, that's one thing. Any business, I think that's great. But publishing in particular, it's tough. You need to be continually putting your magazine out there, getting people to subscribe to it. You're fighting with 3,000 other titles on newsstand. You're trying to come up with timely, topical editorial for people to read and continue to be interested in your magazine, and you have to be continually changing the look, moving with the times, and it's a challenge. It's fun. I mean, when Carguide started back in 1972, there were a number of individuals who were working on actually a magazine called Track and Traffic. That's where Carguide came from. And Alan McPhee is still here. He was the art director at the time. He's now the senior vice president of the company. And Alan's a real cornerstone here. He's one of the founders of Carguide. Graham Fletcher, Graham's he's the Mr. Know-It-All. He and Tim Lindsay, the assistant editor, they know what's happening. I've kind of got a favorite expression. People say, well, when are you going to finish making the changes? When are you going to be happy with it? And, I guess it's like so many other things, that when the day finally comes that we bring a magazine off press and I'm 100% happy and say this is the best we can ever do and we can never improve on it, I think that's probably the day we'll bring off the last magazine, because I don't think it can happen.
2 years ago at the Detroit Auto Show, Hyundai introduced its HCD2 concept car. It was a big hit. And so designers took the concept and created the Tiburon. Tiburon is Spanish for shark, and Hyundai hopes to take a big bite out of the competition.
Hyundai is definitely moving in a new direction with the sports car. And it's a great image car for Hyundai. It's a 2-liter sports coupe, 145 horsepower. The market is not huge, but we think with our pricing, we can grab a lot of that market. We're looking at introduction in the fall of '96, and pricing hasn't been set, but we're looking around mid-16s to about $18,000.
The Dodge Neon was an instant success when it debuted in North America 2 years ago. Chrysler is now hoping to duplicate that success in Japan. Chrysler plans to sell 4,000 right-hand drive Neons this year in Japan and 12,000 in '97. Chrysler also sells a right-hand drive Grand Cherokee in Japan, as well as a left-hand drive Stratus. Adapting the Neon for the Japanese market included moving the steering wheel as well as shortening the distance between the driver and the brake pedal.
It's time to update our long-term Voyager. Now, Chrysler have ruled the minivan roost since they invented it, and having lived with the Plymouth derivative, it is not difficult to understand why. Realistically, there are vans that do some things better than the Magic Wagon. That said, there is not another van that is as complete in terms of the whole package. Obviously, with all the camera gear we lug around on a daily basis, versatility is very important to the motoring crew. In this regard, the Voyager has never failed. On our final update, we will review the numbers. Now let's just say that they're going to surprise a lot of people.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns some simple steps to improve your vehicle's fuel economy. First of all, check the cargo area of your vehicle for any unnecessary weight. If you're lugging around things you don't need to, take them out. The second thing you want to do is check your tire inflation pressure. The next thing you want to check is your vehicle's air filter. In either case, if the filter is clogged or restricted, you're certainly giving away some fuel economy, and it's a pretty simple thing for most motorists to replace this element. You know, there's an awful lot of factors affecting the fuel economy of your vehicle, and we just mentioned a few of the basic things you should check today. But you know, one of the biggest gains you can realize is by improving your driving habits. Avoid jackrabbit starts, excessive speeds, or unnecessary idling, and you'll probably realize a significant gain right there just by improving your driving habits. That's your Midas tip of the week.
Do you have a permit? Should you have a permit? More on Kenzie's Corner. That's coming up next.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
It seems that whenever I'm looking for a parking spot, the only empty ones are the handicapped spots. But you know, I resist the temptation, and so do most able-bodied drivers I know. As a matter of fact, we get really upset when somebody cheats on that thing. As a matter of fact, this guy, I'm a little cranky right here. This guy's poking over the line here. You know, you're not supposed to get one of these permits unless you can't walk 200 meters without great difficulty. And some of the worst offenders are people who've gotten temporary permits. Maybe they've broken their leg or something, but they continue to renew them after they've gotten better. Some say that the bureaucrats who issue these permits should be more careful, but hey, they're not the doctors. We got to go after the medical people who continue to authorize these renewals. Now, enforcement of these laws is obviously very difficult. There's only so many parking control officers, but of course there's always us vigilantes as well. And you know, I saw one guy parking in a regular parking spot, and he was a handicapped guy, and I chewed him out for that too. But seriously, next time you're tempted to go after a handicapped spot to save yourself a walk at 200 meters, think about it. You're the lucky one. You have the option. I'm Jim Kenzie.
You know, this year marks the 100th anniversary of automobile production, and I wonder, if Henry Ford was alive today, what would he think of all this? You know what? I think he'd kind of like it. I think. Anyway, that's it for now. We'll see you next week for more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
TSN's Motoring 96 has been brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality, always has, always will, and Midas, the way it should be.